Hello everyone. So as per the invitation we received, we will be sharing our knowledge and experience on writing as journalists, and we titled it as Playing the Writing Game. And since English is not our mother tongue, some people find it a little hard to get it organized and put it in an order. So in this presentation, we will be trying to cover most of the aspects that will help you to write a good and a meaningful article. And Chanaka will take over from here, and we'll be switching in the middle of the presentation. So Chanaka, it's over to you.
Thanks, Naveena. So I'll first go over the content that we'll cover over the current presentation. We will alter between myself and Naveena throughout the session. It will last for around 1 hour. And as you can see, we'll start with how to organize your writing and what are the tricks and tactics you can follow to organize your writing so that you can express your ideas in a proper manner. And identifying the audience that you're reaching out, because your writing style should be changed according to audience. And of course, the differences between a brief description versus a magazine or a newsletter article. I mean, in the context of ESPS, you will be writing magazine articles for the annual newsletter, or maybe the quarterly newsletter, which is sent out to the entirety of the public, or maybe on a Facebook post, which is publishing a simple album maybe. So there are differences that you should follow in that context. So we'll follow that. And we'll go briefly into tenses and vocabulary in terms of English, so that you have an idea about where you should improve yourself and how you should improve yourself. And then we'll talk about interviews and the differences between writing just an article versus an interview, how you can conduct an interview, and what are the things you should specifically focus in terms of interviews. And we have few tricks and tips for you to play around. So you have a certain idea about what's coming up. Okay, so I'll be talking to you about the organization of the content. Mainly, in terms of content, there are 3 major parts in whatever you write. It will have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. And within next few slides, Naveena will talk to you about each of these portions of writing. But what I have to say is that distinguishing between these areas, like having a proper introduction, having a comprehensive body, and a conclusion which overall grasps the overall idea, is very important, especially for an article. It's not exactly applicable for a brief description, because you can't include all this content in a brief description. So Naveena will talk to you about each of these components. But before we dive into this content, I'll talk to you about the overall idea of organizing the content. So one of the most important things about writing something is that keeping track of the references. As an example, let's say you are writing an article with reference something. I'll go back to my ESPS did. I wrote an article about the Mars journey, which is planned by Elon Musk. So when you write something like that, you'll come across many sources throughout your research into the topic. So it's very important that you keep track of those sources. So there are different tools that you can use for these kind of things. And I'll show you some of them. So let's say you are just writing an article for the Gauge newsletter. So that will be one task. You don't have to like you don't have many references in it, but you will definitely have some references in it. So one of the easiest way to use referencing in this kind of a context is using the referencing tool available in Word itself, Microsoft Word itself. I believe almost all of you should be using the Microsoft Office suite. So using the referencing tool in Microsoft Word is pretty easy. Just give me a second, I'll show you too, so you have a better understanding of what I'm talking about. Okay, so just ignore the content. We'll go to the content later. In Microsoft Office, if you just go to Referencing tab, you can see that there's a citation window here. If you just click on it and add a new source, you can easily add any of the sources that are available here. Naveena, can you guys see the pop-up window?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So as you can see, you can just select the source that you like, the type of the source. It can be an electronic source. It can be a journal article. It can be a book. And you can add all this information in this, and this just press OK, so it will be saved. And you can reference throughout your article without an issue. So one of the reasons why I told you that the Office tool is far more easier is that everything is give me a second, I'm going to switch to the shared window. Okay, so the easiness of this is that you have all the referencing relevant to your article in your article itself. You don't have to look anywhere else. So even if you write something over 2 weeks, you have everything in one place. And you can just edit this as you find any article. And that makes it far more easier for you to follow and also to keep track. And in other terms, let's say you are researching for a lot of articles. Then there are third-party tools such as Zotero, which you can be used to keep track of thousands of references if you wish. And this is if you are referencing for a lot of articles at once. So there are many options for you to cover referencing. And then you have to, like, when you read through all this content that you come across, while the references add legitimacy to your content, you should make sure that you differentiate between opinions and facts. So let me give you an example in the current context. If some articles or a news article says that by next week the COVID-19 will subside in Sri Lanka and you can expect everything to come back to normal, that's an opinion expressed by a journalist. But if someone says that according to statistics, we can look into next week and see how the trend is going, and if someone is using historic data to tell you how the trends are going to be in the coming week, that's in a factual context. So you should be able to differentiate between facts and opinions. And when you write something, you should make sure you clearly express that this is a factual and this is an opinion. So you don't mislead the audience, because opinions can be biased, but facts are based on proof. So you should not mislead your audience, and also you should keep the integrity of your writing. And one other main thing is that you should stick to paragraph or subtopics. So if you have different content, so if I go back to what I told earlier, if you're writing about Elon Musk, he has different projects, like his Mars project, his Boring project, and let's say his electric car projects. If you are reference to each of these projects, you should make sure that they comes under different subtopics, or you can just not have subtopics but differentiate it by paragraphs so that you are clear and precise to everybody, and you make a lot of sense when you differentiate your content like that. And all in all, it's very good if you can sketch a plan of what you're going to write. So given that you have references, you know what you're going to write, sketching a plan will make sure that you cover all the bases that you need to cover. It's important that you keep to a certain extent, like you can't cover everything in any of the topics, but make sure that this plan will show you what are the things that you're going to cover and you don't miss out on any trends. So, Naveena? You're muted.
Sorry about that. And thanks for the highlight, Chanaka. So, as Chanaka was explaining earlier, and pardon me, I hope you can hear me well. No?
Yes.
Okay. So, as Chanaka was discussing earlier, before we write an article, let's say an article, we need to have a proper plan, and in that plan we have 3 basic parts. So that comes as the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So I think by now you should be familiar with the concept of having an introduction, the body, and conclusion to your article. And for those who are not familiar with the topics, let's go through them in brief. So the introduction, it's usually the first paragraph of your article, and it should be very catchy because that's the starting point of the article, and that's where the readers get the idea about what you're writing and if they want to read it or not. So come up with a catchy introduction and just introduce the topic. Say something interesting about the topic, but you are not to go into deep detail in your introduction. It's just one simple paragraph to give a brief idea about the topic that you're writing now. And next, after the introduction, the paragraphs, those come next, will be the body of your article. So in this body of your article, you will have the details, all the details that you need to put in this article. So the facts and opinions you have found during your research or the survey, you can include as organized on the subtopics in the body of the article. So this is where you go into depth explanations. Your explanations must be very well organized, as Chanaka explained in the previous slide. And you need to maintain the consistency in your article. And to maintain the consistency, you need several weapons, let's say weapons in your hand. So those, some of those will be covered in this webinar. And let's say to maintain the consistency of your article, you must be very well equipped with your vocabulary and the tense. So mainly it's the body that matters. When you include your details, the facts and opinions that you found during your survey when you write the article. Chanaka, can you go to the next slide? Okay. And always remember that the body of your article supports the topic which you are writing about. So as Chanaka mentioned earlier, you need to have a plan. And in that plan, you will have different subtopics which will fill up the body. And since you are writing an article, there must be a progressive order. You have to build your article step by step. And that is, when you read your article, you must be able to see a gradual improvement and build up in your stages. So when you organize the body, be careful choose the subtopics wisely, and organize them in a progressive order. This makes the article meaningful as well as interesting. And it makes sure that the flow of your article is very smooth. So moving on to the conclusion is usually one paragraph which falls in the end and generally gives the readers an interesting point to think about. One could say that the conclusion is as well as a summary. Yes, that sometimes can be, but it's always good to keep it short and simple. Try not to summarize your article in the conclusion, but to give some opinion or share some opinion that somebody else has on the article. Usually, it's a good thing to pop a question in the reader's mind in your conclusion, so that the readers would want to read more on the article or share your article with people and have discussion. That means taking your article into a next level. So that's about the conclusion, and that's all. Okay, over to you. You're on mute, I think.
Sorry. So I'll talk to you more about the audience. So one of the, like I mentioned earlier, the audience from one media to another varies, maybe dramatically. As an example, if you are writing a simple Facebook post, your audience is your colleagues, which maybe not in technical aspect, but maybe from your schools or maybe from your university itself, some past students, and maybe the whole wide world. So let's talk in the context of the Gauge newsletter Facebook page. Then the audience is limited to mainly to people affiliated with Peradeniya or people who are interested with it. So when you write a description here, it's important so that you focus on their interests. So you know this is going to be a general audience who might not be technically sound, but people who are interested in what's going on in the university and whatnot. And if you go to the Gauge newsletter, that's a completely different audience, because you are targeting the lecturers of the university or the industrial personnel who you get in touch with. So all these people are curious about your technical skills, and this is a platform where you can show off your technical skills, and you can be specific for the subject at hand. If it's an engineering topic, you can dive deep into that subject, because many people who will be reading it will be sound in that area. But it is important that you draw this line between the general audience and the specific audience that you get in these two platforms, or any platform that you write into. So it is obvious that you cannot generalize the audience. You cannot draw a line that this media will be consumed by these people and this only by these people. But you can have a general idea about who it's going to be. So make sure you do a small research into what you are reaching out to. So write according to that idea. So we'll dive deep into these two contexts. We're mainly going into Facebook or social media audiences and magazine audiences. I'll talk about the social media audience next, and Naveena will tell you about the magazine audiences. So you can read through the slide, but I'll give you what you need to know about this audience. It's very important that in case of social media, you should keep it short and precise. I mean, in your local context, just think about how many long Facebook posts have you read today. It may be just one, maybe never. Some people don't even read something that have a read more tag in the lower portion of the article because it's too long for them. So it's very important in this context of social media to keep it brief but precise. And also, if I roll back to the context of Gauge, we are mainly focusing on albums, which are mainly visual media rather than a writing thing. And I, for one, never read a caption in an album. If it is just 1 or 2 sentences, I might read it, but if not, nobody reads a caption of an album. So it's best if you can keep those captions precise and brief, and you can use the space to give credit to people who help you out in that making that album, the writers, the photographers, editors, and whatnot, and give small context into what that album is, and that will be it. So make it brief, don't need to go into too much details, and so that the attention span of people on social media is very less. So you can just have it to a size where people will read it. So that's about it in current context, but you can of course go into more social media posts that focus on ongoing things in the university and whatnot. In that case as well, stick to what I told you. So it will capture the audience far better, and you have a better reach than a long post, which will not serve a purpose. Okay, handing over to Naveena.
Okay, thank you, Chanaka. And as Chanaka explained, that's the slight difference between the pieces you write for magazines and the Facebook posts. So, my part is to talk about the writings in your magazine and newsletter article, which is more or less the same in our context. And different to the Facebook posts, these will be reached rather by an audience with a technical background, because as you know, we share the magazine with companies that have a similar technical background as us. So the people there will be sound in their technical knowledge, and they will be aware about the jargon. So targeting the technical community or the people with the technical background, we write the articles to the magazine and the newsletters. And the most important thing about writing an article to the magazine is its organization. There are like 12 to 15 articles in the magazine, and you need to make sure that the articles are very well organized and the consistency is good, and the build-up in the article is preserved. So as we discussed in the previous parts where I explained you about the body of the article, the introduction and the conclusion, we need to make sure that these 3 sections are taken care of when you write the article. And unlike short descriptions, these articles usually contain several paragraphs. And as mentioned earlier, again and again, what you need to take care of is the progressive flow followed by a nice conclusion at the end. And to maintain this progressive flow, the use of tenses and proper use of vocabulary is a must. A writer's vocabulary is a writer's strength. And we'll be discussing more about vocabulary in next slides and what you should be doing to expand it and to strengthen it. So given the time constraints, we'll limit the discussion on vocabulary in this slide up to this end. And we'll also be talking about tenses in another slide that's coming up. So we'll go into deep as much as we can, because tenses is not something that we can cover up in an hour. It's an entire lesson in English grammar. So we'd help you with what you can do to keep it going, strengthening your vocabulary and tenses in the next slides. And just make sure that you know that you'd be needing to strengthen your vocabulary and the use of tenses to Keep the article flow good, progressive, and meaningful. And as mentioned earlier, do not forget to include the references in an accepted form in your article. It's a must. If you get something from an article which is already published or from a book, you need to give the credits at the end. You need to mention from where you took the information, so that, because one reason is you are held responsible for what you write. So you need to make sure that if you take something from an already published article, you make sure that you give the credits. That's a good ethic. Can you move on? Okay. Does the tense matter? Yes, it does. It does matter, and it plays a big role, a huge role in making a complete article, a good article. So, as you guys are aware, there are like 3 major tenses: past, present, and future. And there's also a tense called continuous. And altogether, if we summarize, there will be 16 tenses, which is hard to cover during this short period of time. So for Facebook events, of course, for Facebook posts, we can go with the simple past tense in most of the cases. There may be exceptions. However, you can say that an event report can go in the simple past tense. But when you're writing an article, it's usually a mix of tenses, and you need to make sure that you come up with the proper tense in the proper way to give the intended meaning. Delivering the information right leads to better communication, which is you want the reader to understand what you intend to write. So without using a proper tense, it's really hard to make the readers understand what you really want to say. Of course, it can sometimes give an entirely different meaning if you use the wrong tense. So let's go through this slide. I have put some of the most important points together in this slide to give you a brief idea about the importance of usage of the proper tense. And let's go through the slide. Many of you will find it easy to read from a slide than to listen to what I speak. So let's go through it. Tense is identified as a change of form in a verb to express the time of an action. The definition itself brings out the importance of the correct usage of tenses. Misplay this card and your entire article will be in jeopardy. So make sure that you use the correct tense, the appropriate tense. If you are not sure, you can always get help. I know that the help is available for you. The ELTU, of course, can help you with that. If not, there are senior members in your club who can help you with that. Or else you can reach to us. We can also help. So moving on, reporting and time aren't mutually exclusive. They go hand in hand. You have to mention the time, mentioning in the sense we express the time with the tense. So reporting is nothing without time. So you have to have a proper understanding on how to express time using the 16 different tenses available. And this can be a challenging aspect for a beginner. Yes, it's okay, because English is not our mother tongue. It can be hard in the beginning, but with practice, you come to a point where you don't have to pay like special attention on the choice of tenses. It just comes naturally to you. When you read enough, when you write enough, it just comes naturally to you. Don't worry. You still have plenty of time to get through with it. And the tense, of course, plays a big role in delivering the information in a right and meaningful manner. It gets a little easier when it comes to event reporting. As I mentioned earlier, it mostly deals with the past tense. However, there can be certain exceptions in some cases. Well, one can't say that you have to use this tense in this manner, because it's not, you can't just be certain and precise about something happening over and over again in the same way. It's this same with tenses. There are exceptions in some cases. That's why I told you about Facebook posts. Event reporting can go in the past tense, but there will always be exceptions. But this gets a little complicated when you're writing an article for a magazine or a newsletter. It's simply not just limited to a single tense. It's always a mix of tenses. The choice of tenses is challenging, but try to make sure that you are good with it and you know how to play with the tenses. It's difficult, I know, but as I mentioned, when you read a lot, when you write a lot, when you practice it a lot, it just comes naturally to you. Chanaka? And yeah, do not let the tenses get you tense. It's obviously difficult, but there's plenty of help available nowadays. So let's get you armed up with that as much as we can, given the time constraints. So let's move on.
Okay, so I'll talk to you about a little bit about vocabulary, and it's a pretty verbose slide, and I'll leave it for you guys to read through it. And of course, the organizers will send you the presentation afterwards, so you can read through it leisurely. So I'll give you a few of personal experiences and how you can improve your vocabulary, because that's what matters in your context. So one of the best ways you can improve yourself is by reading, and of course in English. So if you want to improve English vocabulary, it may be hard at first. I mean, for me, the first book I read, when I read it like 5 years later, it had totally different meaning, because you improve over time and you get more context into what you're reading. But it's very important that you force through it, and please do not try to understand word by word by using dictionaries and so forth. Just read through books, and by the time goes by, you will be able to improve your understanding of the language and also improve your vocabulary in a good sense. So that's one of the ways. And other way is that you should listen to native speakers. This can be in forms of movies and TV series, which is pretty straightforward and also fun. So try to avoid subtitles. Maybe stick to English subtitles, and that will improve your vocabulary. And even though you don't believe it, you can improve your vocabulary if you're playing online video games, because when you play online with your friends, but with the world itself, you will be communicating with them over voice channels, and that is, of course, a very interactive way to increase your language skills. So those feels like fun, because for some, reading books feels like a burden, but I don't think watching a TV series, a movie, or playing a game will be a burden for you. And one of the other things is that listening to podcasts. So in case you haven't heard of them, podcasts are these audio snippets. It can be as long as 2-3 hours, but as short as 15 minutes. And these are maybe opinionated pieces about some current world news, or it may be into some kind of a technical topic. It can be funny, or it's in all the genres out there. So if you discover podcasts, it is one of the best ways for you to learn the language and also be informed about what's going on. So if you have a sound vocabulary, it is very essential that something that you wrote over 2 sentences can be comprised into just 1 sentence when you have a better understanding and when you have a wider vocabulary. And it is obvious when you read someone's articles at what stage of learning they are in. So if you improve your vocabulary over time, it will show up in your writing, and that is very important. So try to follow these tricks that I told you, and also go to the slide. It will have far more content for you. And as usual, the practice makes perfect. So if you practice each of these, you will have a far better understanding, far better guideline towards success. So that's my 2 cents about vocabulary. But as I told you, make sure you dive deep into this and improve yourself over time. Naveena?
Okay. So a little more to what Chanaka said. There's no harm in noting down new words when you watch TV series, especially with English subtitles. You will of course get a feeling that you're looking at the subtitles, not at the TV series, the videos. But it's always better to learn new words. And if you really hate reading books, there are audiobooks available now, right? So you can listen to them as well and learn new things. And moving on to the next topic that's on the discussion for today, it's interviews. So, Chanaka, can you move on to the next slide? So, I'm sure most of you guys have seen the interviews that are in the newsletters and the magazine. Interviews conducted in earlier days, we used to conduct interviews for the magazine, and as I'm aware now, you guys are on to doing video interviews, and I've seen some of them on Facebook. They're really good. And today I'll be sharing my knowledge and experience about how you put an interview into words and get it onto the magazine. So interviews are different to those regular pieces of writing. It's not really an article, it's like reporting speech. You go over to somebody, usually the interviewee, and you ask them questions and note down their answers, and then you report what they have uttered, usually in their words, and publish it as a piece of writing in the magazine. So when you're conducting an interview, there are certain things to take care of. When you are conducting an interview, it's good practice to share the list of questions that you plan to ask during the interview with the interviewee, so that they can prepare themselves more and organize themselves, just like we do when we write articles, so that both of the parties are more prepared what they are doing. And it's important that you do a little bit of research before you interview the person, because you need to prepare your questions. You need to know what the person has been doing, is doing, and will be doing. Of course, the will be doing part is a little hard, but you can have a sound understanding about what the interview has done and doing before you plan the interview, and plan the questions accordingly. And make sure that the interviewee is comfortable with your question. If there's anything that he or she doesn't want to share, it's always good to remove that question. And if he or she is willing to add something new other than what you have already planned, just take a shot at it, discuss with your colleagues, and See if it fits the scope of your interview, and it's not bad to add something new suggested by the interviewee as long as it suits the context of your interview. And the most important thing, you record the interview, the audio for later reference. And while you're doing the interview, take important notes and compare them, tally them with the record available, the audio record available, and make sure that you don't change the idea of what the interviewer has already told you. It's important that you don't change his opinions, but if you really want to change a word, or if you think the word doesn't fit, or if you believe that there's another word that fits more, you can always change it and then ask for permission from the interviewee to change it. Always share the interview transcript before you publish it with the interviewee and wait for his approval. And once you get the approval of the changes, if there's anything new to be added, it's always good to review and then go back with the changes. But it's not like a rule that you have to share the transcript with the interviewee, but it's always a good ethic to do that, just to make sure that there's nothing offensive, nothing you have changed, or no idea of his is changed during wording. As I mentioned, these are not rules, but good ethics to be practicing when you do an interview. And just like writing a magazine article, your vocabulary and your grammar. Grammar plays a big role in an interview. So grammar in the sense, again, tenses. And of course, you have to be careful about spelling and capitalization as well. More or less, the strengths of your article are the same, or the interview are the same. You have to be thorough with your spelling, vocabulary, tenses, and grammar. These four will make an article sound and strong. Then you have to put your ideas, organize it, and keep it going. Chanaka?
Yeah, so before we wind up, I'll talk to you about a few tips and tricks that you can incorporate with your life so that you can improve in this sense. So one of the, I'll go through these points. So be your own critic. So don't write something that you won't read, because obviously you should have passion for what you're writing. So if you are not passionate about what you are writing, if you're not confident about what you're writing, you should be going through it. So always follow through with something that you are passionate about, and be your own critic first, so that you shape up your writing accordingly. And most important thing is be truthful. As I told earlier, make sure you stick to referencing to a certain guideline. We'll talk about it in a little bit. And also make sure you fact check your articles, because in current world, fake news and things like that is very common. So you should be responsible for what you're writing. So make sure you are truthful in terms of context, and also be factual. And practice your writing as much as possible. So this can be a journal of your personal things, which should not be shared with others, but just write a paragraph about your day. And if you practice this for a few months, you'll see that you have improved over time just by scrolling back to the previous entries. So like that, or in any type of writing, make sure you practice every day a little bit. So if it's a journal, it's more fun because it's a personal thing. or you may have some other project that you have to write to or use that. So write every day as much as possible so you get the practice that you need. And as earlier, read as much as possible or listen to the words if the reading is too much of a word. But this is one of the best ways to pick up the words, like new words in the language. And one other thing is practice summarizing. So in one place or the other, we will come across a certain occasion where you have to stick to a certain word limit. So if you have the practice in summarizing, you'll be able to comprehensively add any idea into the space available. It can, if you have proper summarizing skill, you can include all your thoughts into a simple paragraph, and that's a skill that you should master. And as it said, the grammar is very important, and it would not improve overnight. You'll have to work through it. Don't be disappointed just because you can't have improvements over a few weeks, but over time you will definitely be improved, and there are some other tools which you can have. I'll talk to you about that as well. And please do not copy others' work. You can of course quote someone and refer it, but do not copy someone else's work as your own, because that definitely going to damage your integrity. And also, that's not the way to move forward. You should be original in your content, and make sure if you are quoting someone to give reference to them, give credit to them. Okay, so I'll talk to you about grammar and other tools that are available. There are free tools such as Grammarly, which will help you a lot. As native Sinhala Tamil speakers, it's obvious that we will be making very obvious omissions when it comes to English language. So tools available to correct you is very important in this context, so that you can correct yourself where you might miss out. So I'll show you such a tool. There are tools called Grammarly, which you might have heard. This is a free tool that can be added to Microsoft Word and your browser and your mail client and everywhere. So this is actually the text you saw on the slide itself, but slightly altered so that Grammarly will determine some errors. You can see there's a tab called Grammarly, and if you switch it on, you can see all the changes they suggest. See, from mistakes like something written in two words to rather using a word like big but replacing it with a word like significant to make it more stand out, to replacements for words that you have used. So this tool is very helpful. I use this almost every day so that you don't do basically stupid mistakes. So even when you have so much practice, you will still be learning every day because this is not your primary language. So I think using tools like this will help you a lot. Okay, so before we conclude, I'll talk about referencing. So this is basically the references for this slideshow. These are the things that, this slideshow is made by Naveena, and these are the sources that she used to create the slideshow. And this is actually the Harvard style of referencing. And you may have seen people reference just by dropping the link, like references, link. Rather than that, even when you follow a proper style like this, it's more eye-catching, and also that is the proper way to do it. I'll just run through this reference only. This is basically referencing web links. I'm pretty sure most of you will be referencing web links in your article, but the style differentiates a bit when it comes to books, journal articles, and whatnot. So this portion is basically the name of the writer. So Belarus Pop is the one who wrote this. But if there's no specific writer, you can stick to the website, like the main website name. And then you'll have the year it was published, the name of the article, which should be normally written in italic, and then mention that this was an online source. Give where you got the link from and show them when did you access it, the date that you accessed it. So this is the basic idea of the referencing style, and make sure you follow this in your future articles. I guess that's about it that we have for this presentation. Naveena, is there anything else that you would like to add?
Yes, Chanaka, we did miss out one important thing about differentiating between literary appreciations and articles.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So about writing, when you're writing an article, it's very different from a literary appreciation. I'm sure many of you must have studied literature as an O-level subject, and you must have written such a lot of literary appreciations. So make sure that the literary appreciation style does not go into your magazine articles or research articles or your interviews. Those are two different styles, and do not confuse between writing a literary appreciation and a newsletter article. Those are two different things.
Okay, I guess that's about it, right?
Yes.
So, thank you all very much.
There are any questions?
Yeah. I guess we finished in around 55 minutes, so you guys can shoot any questions if you have any.
Hello.
Yes, Akshan.
I have a question for the beginners, because a lot of E18 and E17 people joined for this webinar. So I think there are some people who like to do writing, but they are not confident in it, and they are not writing because of that. Maybe they haven't written an article during their school or something like that. Cause the reason, but what have you to tell them to engage with writing, and what are the tips you have to give to them?
Naveena, can you take over that question?
Okay, so I myself was not very confident about technical writing for a magazine, a newsletter, or even an interview, doing an interview, of course. I was not very familiar with those aspects of writing. But I was kind of good with the grammar anyway, because I have been practicing a lot. But however, what helped me to write in the first place was all the experience I got going out for every interview. It's more about the experiences you get, how you expose yourself onto writing. Read a lot. That's very important. Read a lot and then put it into writing. And then, even if you are not writing the interview or doing the interview, do go with the seniors and take part in the event. See how they do the interviews, and then help them with the organizing the content. I think that will help the beginners to take a step towards writing. It's not easy in the beginning, I get that, but you have to expose yourself before starting. You need to take the chances. You need to have faith in yourself that you can do it. And to help you do it, you have to grab things around you. You have to grab the opportunities around. Right, Chanaka?
Yeah, so I'll add something to that. Like, let's say in the context of ESPS, I guess this is one of the best places to start. And I encourage you all to write for the magazines and all. It can be, you might be a beginner. You might feel like it is not up to the standards, but make sure you do your writing and submit them. So I'm pretty sure there may be times that it is not published, but you will definitely get good feedback from the seniors in the club, so that you can improve all the time. So how you can start it is that just make sure you come up with a topic which you are passionate about. So that's one of the main ideas of starting to write. So you are passionate about what you're writing, and make sure you submit whatever you write, so that you will get good feedback